Good evening to everyone. Well, I missed 2 videos. I apologize. My computer crashed and I was restoring everything. And now we're starting right away. Let's start probably with a mini uprising, so to speak, in Kyiv regarding yet another attempt to forcibly conscript a young man in a car. The police caught up with him and tried to grab him and send him to the front lines. But things didn't go as planned, as they say, according to the Ukrainians. And let's see what we have there. Yes, probably let's read first because there are already some reports. All this happened in Troishkina. A crowd attacked mobilization officers there because of the detention of a man. On Balzaka Street in Kyiv, as we are told, the crowd attacked the patrol. The attackers used gas against the inspectors and damaged the police officer's service vehicle. Here's a picture of it. They say it was a mass brawl. And the conflict started with an attempt to detain a man on Balzaka Avenue, and passers-by decided to intervene. All this started with the detention of a man as part of mobilization actions. The details of the incident were covered by local Telegram channels and journalist Andrei Smolny. People partially blocked traffic and more people kept joining the crowd. Well, and that's good because mutual support is extremely important. Now let's see what it looked like. At first there were only a few people, but then police cars showed up too. And a lot more things as well. So that's how things are. There aren't that many people yet. Although it seems to me there are already close to 100 here, but everyone seems pretty scattered. But actually, if you count everyone, there will be about 100 people. Plus, cars keep stopping and new witnesses to this event keep coming from afar. It also looked like this. This is being filmed from the windows, and you can see that there are really a lot of people. There are even more here than in the previous video. Up close, it looks something like this. Up close. Of course, later they wrote that this was a psyop, that these were supporters of Russia who came out, that actually no one, not Ipsos. That these were supporters of Russia who came out, that in general you can't just haul anyone off in a van, or rather apparently you can. But to try to free from basification, because, well, you need to replenish the human resource for the front, and without this, how can you win and reach the borders of 1991? The police have already stated that there were no mobilization actions there at all. Everything was fine, but in reality they were just detaining some guy with painted over license plates. The police officers, some ex-military who never actually served anywhere, the territorial recruitment center guys, and the police stated that it was about procedural actions that were being obstructed by the crowd. But again, the people are bad, but what can you do? Wherever you look, the people are bad. Such great rulers. Not perfect, it's just that the entire top, absolutely from the bottom to the very top, or rather to the very bottom. These are wonderful people with pure souls, with bright dreams, always thinking about the people, but for some reason the people don't want anyone thinking about them. And they are trying to break free from the shackles, so to speak, of mental control. Of course, I'm talking about the digital country in your smartphone, which could probably also be called a digital concentration camp, but we won't call it that because it's just the edge on your smartphone. What concentration camp? Come on. The police said they saw a Nissan on the street violating traffic rules. When they stopped it, it turned out the license plates were covered, and the driver also tried to escape, drove off, and was moving along the sidewalk. And so, to stop the offense, the patrol called for backup and blocked the car. But did you see how many people were in the car? I don't know, it's like that joke, I don't remember who, about how many people it takes to change a light bulb. 5. And one stands on the table and holds the light bulb, while 4 others grab the legs of the table and spin the whole thing around so the bulb unscrews. But apparently the police acted on pretty much the same principle, because you can block one car by putting a car in front and a car behind. There were about 5 or 6 cars there, so they ended up blocking each other, that car. Common sense. Basically, they blocked everything possible. And the police didn't mention any draft office guys, but online people are talking about the presence of draft office representatives, those very TCC kiddies. The draft office guys tried to detain the man, after which some passersby stood up to defend him. And naturally, there were no official comments from the local draft office at the time of publication. The full picture is contradictory. But you know, if on one side of the scale is the testimony of those who tried to mobilize the young man, or maybe not so young, and the information from citizens who were just passing by, for some reason I tend to believe the information from the citizens who were simply passing by more. I don't know why. Call it intuition. And we're also told why people came out in such large numbers. The thing is, the military enlistment office workers have significantly increased their activity on the streets in recent months. Naturally, they have to do their job so they don't get sent to the front themselves to set up new homes, not for people obviously, but to avoid getting sick. And as a result, the number of mobile groups, so-called notifications, but you can imagine what this notification looks like when someone is dragged off a bicycle and shoved into a van, has increased by 40%. The deputy head of the capital's territorial recruitment center, Valery Kravchenko, officially confirmed this. The groups were given the right to hand out draft notices not only at home, but also at work and in public places. The summons is served on video. They first place it in the person's pocket, then try to push him into a van to notify him at the territorial recruitment center along with the summons. Also, additionally, so to speak, in an oral way. That is, to inform him about the situation at the front and say, "Dear, today you are being sent to some position." You can choose, as all these talking heads say, from all sorts of cooks, economists, stormtrooper artists, stormtrooper sculptors, and other stormtroopers, a profession to your liking. Well, how is it better to storm a position so that you get called something? You know, when a janitor is called a cleaning manager and a stormtrooper will be called, well, a drone operator, probably, for example. Why not? Well, we'll have it somewhere. Alright, jokes aside, in short, there's nothing good about this. And about that small number of vehicles, well, let me show you this video again. Here's something I haven't shown yet. So, what do you think? A small number of vehicles and a small number of people. People are simply fed up. There are already well over 100 people here, as you can see. Cars are just driving into the crowd, trying to get out somewhere. They're not blocking anything. I don't see any Nissan Micra here in the area where the police cars are gathered. But I do see that they're driving into the crowd, and now there are even some trucks and other vehicles showing up. Well, it's hard to imagine how you would need to block a car here for the police to start driving into the crowd like that. Honestly, it's beyond comprehension. The second thing is something I missed and didn't mention. These are horrific attacks on Kyiv, Kharkiv, and other Ukrainian cities, and the Kyiv, Pechersk, Lavra was also affected. The attacks really were horrific. Here at night, we are told that there was a massive attack on Kyiv. The Assumption Cathedral of the Lavra was on fire under the strike on the energy sector. Well, actually, they promised to bomb the energy sector. On the night of June 15, Russia carried out one of the most massive combined strikes on Kyiv in terms of the number of ballistic missiles. Earlier, all of this was called a strike of retribution. Almost all districts of the capital came under fire, plus Kharkiv, Dnipro, and other cities. As a result of the attack, 4 people were killed in Kyiv and another 28 were injured. Well, here you can see what it all looks like. This is the Lavra. It gets the most attention, although, to be honest, well, architectural landmarks are important, but people suffered. For me, that's the main thing. And, well, the houses were also badly damaged. There are shellings here, and there's a fire over there. Emergency services are already here. Right here, several floors are burning at once. And they're saying that last night 70 missiles and 611 attack drones were used. That's about 700 in total air attack weapons. Among them were Shirkon, Iskander M and Iskander K, and in total 632 targets were shot down. Well, in general, both sides always claim that they shoot everything down, but in reality it's absolutely impossible to figure out how many are actually shot down in the end. It's also hard to understand what falls and where, but that's just how things are. There have been confirmed hits from 20 ballistic missiles and 27 drones in 42 locations. The main direction of the strike is Kyiv. Around 60 missiles were launched at the capital alone. As I mentioned, one of the strikes hit the Kyiv, Pechersk, Lavra. A fire broke out, and towers and other historical structures were damaged. Rescuers extinguished it, and the structure withstood the impact. Now we need to understand what happened inside. In Kharkiv, a strike was carried out on the rescuers who were extinguishing the fire after the first hit on the facility. 5 people were killed, unfortunately, another 9 were injured. In Dnipro, a railway station, a college, and various enterprises came under attack. And in Sumy, a drone hit a multi-story building. Among the injured, unfortunately, there is also a child. The strikes affected Zaporizhia, Donetsk region, Mykolaiv region, and other sites. And as a result, energy facilities were also attacked. Because of this, there was a power outage. Some consumers in Kyiv, Kharkiv, Sumy, Odessa, and Zaporizhia regions, now at Ukrenergo, many say they are doing everything they can. And they can actually do more now in the summer than in the winter, but still, the recovery is not progressing as fast as we would like. Then there are also stories about what's going on with the Lavra. On the wreckage of the device that exploded in the Lavra, they found markings that they say indicate the origin of certain components. They say it was made in Alabuga, prepared. As a result of the strike in the Lavra, the roofing, domes, walls, and even the glazing of the cathedral were damaged. Here you can see these different damages. Spare parts. Also spare parts, as I understand it, and here various identification data are shown. Here you can clearly see the damaged Kyiv, Pechersk, Lavra, so the damage was really very severe, and well, probably all of this will continue. Immediately after that, of course, he went to the site where the fire broke out, where the Lavra was bombed. Zelensky also appeared there right away. Zelensky immediately said that it was necessary to meet with Putin at the J7 summit. He stated that Ukraine had proposed to Putin to meet in France in the presence of the leaders of the US and the EU. He made this statement powerfully at the Kyiv, Pechersk, Lavra, which was damaged by a Russian strike during the night. And he proposed to meet on June 15 while the summit continues again until June 17. According to Zelensky, Ukraine has sent a request to meet with Putin during the summit to talk in the presence of the leaders of the US and the European Union. We made it clear, says Zelensky, that we are ready to meet with Putin during the summit because Trump and Macron will be there. That is, Europeans plus Americans. In Zelensky's opinion, this is a very good opportunity for everyone to meet together. Well, as for the confrontation with the West's opposition, unfortunately, according to Zelensky, Russia did not support it. Europe and the United States reached an agreement while Russia once again demonstrated that it is not ready for dialogue. Well, the summit itself was opened by the powerful Monsieur Macron, who, while talking about everything and nothing, stated that among the main topics are support for Ukraine and ending the war. Undoubtedly, such important points were touched upon as peace pistols ranks as peace bullshit. These are not my words. These are the words of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Here he is. He was telling all this, and nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, then the borders of the 90th year of the first year. Well, you can add something else, knowing the powerful Monsieur Macron about what they are considering there. But overall, I think the budget for holding the summit was spent, delicious dishes were enjoyed, walks somewhere in various places, just not through Ukraine. Those were also enjoyed, so even though the 17th hasn't come yet, we can already expect an announcement that everything went just perfectly. I think the summit will be closed with applause from all the attendees and participants in the event, and everyone will be absolutely delighted. Well, how could it be any different? So many good people have gathered once again. I wonder if Kaja Kallas, who is about to be dismissed, was there or not. Now that would be a twist. If you don't remember, if the European Union wants to reform or even completely eliminate a separate diplomatic service, that separate diplomatic service which is headed by Kaja Kallas. But it's being said that Kaja Kallas talks too much, makes mistakes, and expresses a lot of opinions on her own behalf. And these opinions are not based on any common agreement or shared position of all the participants in the negotiations, or even just the countries of the European Union. So, a person comes out claiming to be a diplomat, shares some personal opinion, and everyone thinks it's the common position of the EU members, but in reality it's not. She's just presenting her own wishes as facts. But maybe later they do become reality, but that's not how things should be done. That's why the European Union doesn't want to see this kind of diplomacy anymore, because it's just too diplomatic. So what? And about democracy in Ukraine. The European Union stated that many goals have been achieved, including transforming Ukraine into a democratic country. And you can judge how democratic it is from the story about this woman. She posted several statements on social media against Zelensky without any calls for violence or anything like that. She simply stated that she didn't like this or that. She talks about what Zelensky has achieved. For example, she mentions lost territories, lost lives, and the collapse of the economy. And suddenly it turns out that this is a criminal offense. This is extremely interesting, of course. According to the court, this woman's statements contain justification for Russian aggression, and accusing the president of the country of causing people's deaths excludes Russia's responsibility as the aggressor country. In one of her posts, the woman claimed that the authorities use tragedies as an information occasion to attract foreign attention. The war continues just to show Western partners that children, well, supposedly we are just a picture for them, our lives are just a picture for them, says the detainee. And in the leadership of Ukraine, she also says they use such an image for the sake of Bugattis and Newcastles in Europe. In another post, she said that the responsibility for the deaths of people lies with Volodymyr Zelensky and called on him to step down from the presidency. For this, the woman was given, I think, 5 years. And she has a minor child. What do you think about that, Elon Musk? Well, that's democracy for you. So it turns out that you can't accuse the government of anything, because if you suddenly accuse it, for example, of corruption, it turns out that it's not guilty of anything. And the root of it all, the very first cause, is Russia. And the fact that now there are thieves there, these TCC guys, all these so-called leaders, that's just a consequence. And as they say, the consequence is that the son is not responsible for the father. Apparently, these so-called leaders are also not responsible for starting the war. So probably what? Honestly, I find it difficult to draw a logical connection between these statements, where it turns out that those who steal, profit, or do something else like that are not to blame for anything. And the ones to blame are those who talk about it. Well, that's just wonderful. The further it goes, the better. Lock everyone up. Now we're talking about fives here. It's like how Ukraine used to accuse Stalin, saying that's at least 10 years, or at least 5 years. Once again, enemies of the people have suddenly appeared in Ukraine. They're being imprisoned and accused, though they haven't gotten to execution troikas yet. Apparently everything is still going as planned. And the goal is probably set for next year. Of course, I'm joking. I hope it won't come to that. But you know, there's a grain of truth in every joke. Next, we have powerful leaders. Why it's impossible without them, I don't even know. So let's bring out the first one. He will announce the others for us.
We are completely satisfied with our work. But unfortunately, our work did not bring any results. It didn't lead to anything.
Вот, не принесла результат. Now let's hear from the authors of these works, these projects, who do so much for the prosperity of Ukraine. Who should we start with? Well, we have Haidukovich, who says that many Ukrainians believe the country owes them something, but in reality that's not the case. Username, you owe the country, not the other way around. So the question is, what should the country do and why does it supposedly owe nothing? It's surprising. But that's a rhetorical question. Apparently Haidukovich doesn't have an answer to it either.
That small, tiny part that's involved in various processes of defending the country right now, the rest think that the state owes them. The rest think that they just want to receive.
Well, the rest might be paying taxes, unlike the deputy who uses up that tax money. And maybe that's exactly the reason. If a person pays taxes, he wants to see something in return from the state, quality medical care, or a business-friendly environment. Maybe that's it, but apparently not, according to Gaidukovich, no. Only you have obligations. A citizen shouldn't have any rights. The rest, I believe,
that they already have enough to make their claim about something in the state. But to invest in overcoming the above-mentioned problems in one way or another, basically, they don't want to.
And the ones who should be solving problems are those who go into politics, those who become leaders of state organizations. I don't know why no one has told the deputies about this until now, but as a rule, crime is fought, for example, by the police and the courts. And anti-corruption officers fight against corruption. Who else do they fight against? Well, I was going to say they fight against the economy, but okay, they fight against problems. Economic agencies, of course, which are government agencies, fight against the economy. How can ordinary people fight economic problems, corruption at the highest levels of power, and military problems or threats? Honestly, I don't understand. But apparently Gaidukovich has an understanding of this process. Or maybe it's just a telethon, but it's like that the journalist on the left is already tired. Gaidukovich is talking, his soul and heart apparently are burning. After recovering from yesterday's feast somewhere in a restaurant, and now he's complaining that the mood is so bad. This is the same kind of stage trauma. Well, the deputy is suffering the most. You see, now the poor thing has a trauma too. Well, that's how it is. What can you do? Well, and then let's talk about that. The war correspondent Aitman, who is once again sitting on the couch with a soft pillow under his behind, telling us that the nukes are already working just like that. And he's echoed by young Lenin in the form factor of a young Elton John. Let's help Vlad Voloshin figure out who he is. Write in the comments. If you recognized him, let us know. By the way, this war correspondent is a champion of oratory, but only underwater oratory. When he speaks, you can't understand anything at all. No matter what language he speaks, it's just some incoherent set of phrases, and you can only catch a few words here and there that make sense. And there's no overall meaning or logical text, it just doesn't come together. Basically, it just sounds like gibberish. Plus, the war correspondent's home acoustics make it sound like he's in or under a tank. I don't understand.
That's simple. You just take regular uranium ore.
Regular ore. You take uranium ore, you go with a pickaxe, dig up some uranium ore, stuff it, shove it in your pockets. You go to make a nuclear bomb at home with uranium ore in your pockets, twin.
For example, a centrifuge just spins, and there it doesn't match this isotope.
Ha! This war correspondent doesn't understand anything about nuclear weapons production or uranium enrichment. They're talking about a centrifuge, that's obviously enrichment. But the war correspondent doesn't know that, so he thinks that a nuclear bomb is made right in the centrifuge. Apparently he stuffs the ore in there, shakes it out of his pockets, then spins it in some kind of hand mixer, and as a result he gets a bomb. His knowledge of the processes is top-notch.
Here's the drama. It's funny how people there don't know any technologies, it's boring. And if you ask for something like a super electron, just think about it.
You just watch. But what does advanced electronics have to do with it? The main thing there is the speed of the centrifuge itself. The higher the better. And enrichment depends on ultra-fast centrifuges, and getting them comes down to centrifuges. You can't have one at home, but as for war correspondent Hetman, it's clear. He already has centrifuges with enriched and unenriched uranium, nuclear bombs, and other things hidden in every basement. That's another story. But you can't do that in a regular process. You can't get it just anywhere, you just can't find it.
So there's nothing there that would require some really complex equipment. Well, that's the reason.
No, you have to feel it out. If you want to get a feel for it, you should at least go read some simple popular science articles about all this. Well, and young Lenin, as always, fell asleep. He's not interested in this. He nodded and was like, okay, I'll just sleep with this nuclear bomb. And what about us? Well, we've covered these 3 key topics. Write in the comments what you think. Overall, I have a lot of comments about this, but I shared them throughout the video, so let's exchange opinions. Let's share our thoughts. Well, while I'm waiting for your thoughts, I'm making a new video. Bye, everyone.
I don't know what servicemen are, not just assault troops. These are people who communicate with each other, gossip among themselves, and everyone is trying to get something out of it. In offensive actions, that is, in assault operations, there are more chances to survive than just staying put. That's why you approached us differently than what you were told. Civilian assaults, local assaults, that you'll die or something else. We have many directions.